everybody, welcome to the Waldock Way. I'm Jessica, and today's video is going to be a let's chat about gaps in education. So last week I talked about it in my homeschool question and answer part 2, which I will link up here. One of the main questions that I saw reoccur was about, learning about your child worrying about your child being behind, or worrying about there being gaps, or worrying about them being things that they don't know, or, the approach that we take being a little more laid back and taking unit study style approach. What do I worry, and all of this. And I will say that was probably the #1 question I got. So I decided that that needs to be a video all in itself, because this is something I'm going to need to refer people back to over and over and over. So this is gonna be all by itself. I would be lying to you if I told you I didn't worry, because as a mother, as a good homeschool person, as a good whatever, it is like built into you to worry. That's one of the things that keeps your children safe, right? Because you worry that they're gonna run out in the road with traffic coming, and so you worry and you teach them, and you make sure that doesn't happen. You worry that they're gonna drown in a pool, so you make sure they know how to swim. You worry that they're going to walk out of the house in the middle of the night while you're asleep, so you lock the door, or you put higher locks. We have like the really high locks on all of our doors. So that's what makes you a good parent. You do things because you worry, and it helps keep your child safe. So if I was to sit here and tell you, no, I have absolutely no worries about anything education-wise, I would be lying, because it's like built into us. It's something that we all have, and it's supernatural, and it's no different than parenting. But just because you worry about something doesn't mean that that should make you change what you're doing. Yes, I worry that there's a possibility Emily could drown, but that doesn't mean I'm going to tell her she can never get in a body of water. Yes, I worry that, she may fall out of the swing when she's swinging really, really high. That doesn't mean I'm never going to let her swing again. I worry that my husband may get in a car wreck, but I can't, stop him from driving. So just because you're worried about something doesn't mean that it's a sign that you should stop or that you should even change things. If I was to sit here and tell you that I didn't have what I call homeschool panic, I would be lying. I do. You can ask a long list of my homeschool mama friends who all come to my rescue when I freak out and want to throw 15,000 worksheets at Emily because, oh my gosh, I'm having my freak out. It happens every few months. It happens to all of us. I will say that's why I think you should have some sort of like record, whether it is pictures, whether it is a written journal. For me, it's OneNote, whatever you need to kind of be able to see that even when you weren't doing school, you were still doing school. Even though you might not have done 77 lessons in your math workbook yet, or your math curriculum yet, which is where you should be, that you were still getting things done. You were still being productive. But we all panic, we all worry. The best thing about that is that that's telling you that you're doing a good job. I mean, if you're worrying about your child, it means you're doing a good job. And nobody is ever going to worry about your child's education or care about your child's education more than you do as their mother. Not gonna happen. It's not possible. There is nobody in this entire world who is going to care more about their child's education, who is going to be more invested in their child's education than you. Point blank. Now, I will tell you really, really quick, one comment that gets like the most, engagement from people. It's their favorite thing that I've ever said, and it is in the video where I say, let's talk about being behind. I'm gonna link that up here for you guys, but it is this, that your child is not behind and they're not ahead. Your child is right where they belong. And I believe that wholeheartedly, that every child is right where they belong. There is no being ahead or being behind. This is a homeschool, and we are catering to our children, and they're right where they need to be. And so you just need to teach right where they're at. End of discussion. Okay, now on to gaps, which is what this video was really supposed to be about, now that I will step off my high horse. Gaps in education are inevitable. I'm gonna say that again. Gaps in education are inevitable. Me and my husband sat down and talked about this. I am 32 and I have gaps. My husband is 50 something, 51, and he has gaps. We all have gaps in our education. There is absolutely no way possible for you to teach your child everything there is to know by the time they're 18. I don't care if you school them 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, around the clock, and never take a break from it's just that you can't do it. There is too much information and too much knowledge that you can't teach them everything. There's going to be gaps. They're going to have gaps. There's going to be things you didn't teach them. There's going to be things they didn't know. But as a homeschool parent, you are the one who gets to decide what those gaps are. You get to make the decision what things you're okay with letting slide, or what things you're okay with not learning, or what things you're okay saying, okay, they can learn this in college or in tech school or in their job, if that's, you know, because college isn't always the path for everybody. So whatever their path is when they're older and get out of your house, you get to decide. That can be whatever it is. For me, it is diagramming sentences. And you can judge all you want. I was forced to diagram sentences in a private school that I went to in middle school. And I thought it was the dumbest thing in the entire world. If you are an English major, I am sorry and I apologize. I love algebra, but diagramming a sentence made no sense to me, still makes no sense to me, and I've never used it again. So that is the one thing that I'm like, if we never get around to diagramming a sentence, I'm okay with that. But that's just me. That was something I knew from the day that I started homeschooling, that I was like, I'm not really gonna be worried with it. But here's the thing. For us personally, when me and my husband sat down and we talked about gaps, the gaps that we were okay with were diagramming sentences. He was okay with her not knowing a ton of algebra because he went back to college in his late 40s knowing hardly any algebra and was able to completely teach himself and pass all of the college classes. So I mean, yes, we want her to know algebra, but that was not on like our top list. Maybe your goals are completely different. But the one gap that we both unanimously decided that we were not okay with was a relational gap. We were okay if she couldn't diagram a sentence or she couldn't always solve for X. What we weren't okay with was there being a gap in our relationship. So at the end of the day, our priority in our home for homeschool has always been relationships above all else, because that was the gap that we were not okay having. That is why we mostly do unit studies. That is why we mostly do interest-led. I'm not saying that that's not where our homeschool would have gone anyway, because it may have been that that's where it would have ended up, but it's mainly because over the years, that's what we have decided is the gap that we're not okay with is a relationship gap, a relational gap between me and Emily, or between Emily and my husband, or even between me and my husband, because we couldn't see eye to eye on something. That was the gap. We always said, we cannot have this. We're not going to allow it. And everything in our homeschool, including our homeschool vision statement, has been surrounded by the fact that that is our priority. Making sure that we cultivate our connection and our relationship. And so at the end of the day, that means that we are going to strive to do things that make us happy, that bring us closer together, that make us enjoy learning. Our vision statement, in case you're wondering, is to cultivate lifelong learning while prioritizing connection and relationships. So that is exactly what I just said, that we are going to make that a priority. We are not going to, I'm not saying that there's not going to be things that we're going to do eventually at some point that are going to be like, oh man, I don't really love these, because I'm sure there will be. But if it is completely ruining our relationship, like, and I mean just absolutely ruining it, then something needs to change. We're going to step back and we're going to change that. But at this point in our homeschool career, at this point in Emily's educational lifespan, there's no reason for it. She's 7, she's in 2nd grade. For her to absolutely hate something, it's just not worth it. I want our relationship to be a priority, and I want her love of learning to be a priority. I also personally wholeheartedly feel like when you are interested in something, you retain it and you learn at a deeper level. For instance, I hated history. I thought I hated history. I didn't hate history, I hated how I was taught history. Because as I've been homeschooling, it has come to my realization that I don't hate history itself. I actually enjoy parts of history, but I didn't like the way I was taught. My husband, on the other hand, loves history and could quote things and tell you all about, like, he is a history buff, but that's because he loved history in school. I, on the other hand, really, really liked math. I have no rhyme or reason why I did, but I did. I loved math. I love numbers. I love solving for things. I actually really enjoy algebra. I enjoy statistics and calculus, and so that is something that I'm really, really good at. That's something I remembered. I can look at, now I may not be able to solve it the way they solve it nowadays because it's changed a little, but I can look at a problem and almost instantly tell you the answer even before working it all the way through. That's just something I'm good at. It's something I enjoyed. It's something I was interested in. And that is when we also decided that interest-based was going to be the majority of what we taught in our homeschool, or the majority of what we did, because we know from personal experience that if you're interested, you're more likely to retain it, and you're more likely to want to know more and to love learning. And so that's why that is our biggest thing. We do unit studies because most of our unit studies are based on interest, and they end up blowing up and being like this huge deep dive, like the veterinarian unit that we did, because she loved it so much. My job as a homeschool mom is to try to incorporate as much as I can in those like core subjects that I know she needs into her interest. So that's where like the unit study, interest-led, child-led, whatever you want to call it, comes into play. When we did that veterinarian unit study, I have my goals, my prime core goals that I want her to learn by the end of the year, and I try to get those into her interest in the unit study so that it's a win-win. So we are keeping our relationship intact, we are learning the things she still needs to learn, and she's interested and highly engaged all at the same time. So that is where I stand on gaps. There are going to be gaps. It's inevitable. Your job as the homeschool mom is to decide what gaps you're okay with and what gaps you're not okay with, and to make sure that at the end of the day, the gaps you're not okay with are the ones that you are bridging. Make sure you're, no matter what, you're filling those gaps, you're bridging them, you're not letting those gaps happen. But you need to just accept that there are going to be gaps. But decide now what gaps you are okay with and what gaps you aren't okay with, what is important to you, what is your vision for homeschooling, and then do whatever you have to do to strive to make that the priority and make that the end all be all.